And what is up, awesome people? So there have been an ongoing debate for a good number of years regarding motor pins or motor plugs, whatever you want to call it. And this is in specific to the Tiny Whoop. That's because they use these AIO flight controllers or all-in-ones. Now there are some of us who already know the results, but of course I'm doing this video specifically to show those who have not tried the difference between soldered motors and motors with the plugs. Is it a myth? Or is it fact? So let's jump in. So I have right here two identical Mobile 804s. One is cloned from the other, so I've got everything set up exactly the way it is. The motors are the same, the flight controller is the same, and they're all brand new. Props are also brand new, frame is also brand new. Well, kind of fairly new. The only difference is that I have soldered the motors onto the flight controller and removed the connecting pins for this one, and I've also soldered the O4 light onto the flight controller. Now the original is using the motor pins where the motors are plugged into the flight controller. Both Mobile 8s are using the Happymodel FOV extender. The soldered Mob 8 is using the dipole antenna, which weighs exactly the same as the crown antenna that I'm using for the motor plug one. Both Mobile 8s are using the crazy F405 HD ELRS. Soldering these motor wires actually requires very young eyes. Old ones like mine just not gonna make it, so I use a digital microscope to get this solder done. I've got a very fine tip TS100 and the tip still looks fat to me on these solder pads. Now I don't have a conclusive way to measure the data that I need, so I'm just going to do a simple basic flight and compare the difference. I've adjusted the OSD right in the middle so you can see the amp draw as well as the draw from the motors to give you an easy visual. Now I'll be using these 2S LiPos. These are the 530mA HV LiPos. What I'm doing is checking for the voltage to make sure that I use two of the exact same LiPos with the exact same voltage to get the test as accurate as I can. Now the best I can conclude is that the Whoop with the soldered motors would actually give me a longer flight time as compared to that with the motor plugs. So these are the LiPos that has exactly the same voltage, and I'm going to be putting one of them on each of the Mobile 8s. First thing I'm going to do is do a full punch out for about 3 seconds or so. This is so that I could read the data off from the amp draw and fly it around until the voltage reaches 3.70. So this soldered Mod 8 gave me around 1 minute 6 seconds of flight time. Unfortunately, something went wrong with the recording of the Mod 8 with the motor plug, but I did record the flight time of the Mod 8 on camera. So forgive me for not having a DVR for this segment, so it's gonna be like about 50 seconds of flight without the DVR. flight of the Mobila 8 with the motor plugs is about 50.7 seconds. Next, I took 2 runs with the Mobila 8s and run them down to about 3.7 volts, and the one on top is the one with the motor plug and the one below is the one without. Throughout the test, I noticed that the Mobila 8 with the motor plug runs quite heavy on the amp draw, and I do get lesser flight time with the motor plug Mobila 8 as compared to the soldered one. So that concludes the test for the Mobila 8s for soldered and non-soldered motor plugs, and so far the conclusion is that the ones that are soldered directly onto the flight controller gives you longer flight time and also gives you less amp draw. But then you'd ask, why don't manufacturers actually produce them already soldered? Well, that's mainly because of consumers. Not everyone is able to solder, and the motor plugs would actually make it easier for people who don't know how to solder to replace those motors easily. So basically that is it. I hope you guys find this information useful, and that's it for today's video. Till the next one, thank you all for watching and see you guys again soon. Ciao!